It's strange how life can change in instant. One moment, I thought I had everything: a loving wife, a stable marriage, a future that seemed as solid as the home we built together. The world felt right, balanced in its imperfections. But all of that was shattered the day my wife inherited a fortune, $1 million that would alter our lives forever. When she received the inheritance, she was ecstatic. It was a blessing, an unexpected windfall, a stroke of luck. She couldn't contain her excitement, and I was thrilled for her. For the first time in years, I saw her smile with a freedom I hadn't witnessed before. But something shifted, gradually, like a slow tide creeping in. Her attention drifted away from me, and the warmth of our relationship began to cool. At first, I chalked it up to the excitement of new wealth. She started making decisions without consulting me, indulging in luxuries we never could afford before, and spending more time with her new circle of wealthy friends. The sparkle in her eyes was no longer for me, and her thoughts seemed to be preoccupied with everything but our marriage. I tried to ignore the gnawing feeling in my gut, the growing unease that something was wrong. But how could I have known that the very thing that was supposed to bring us closer, the inheritance, was actually the thing that would drive us apart? It wasn't just the money that changed her. It was something deeper, something darker. And before I could even wrap my mind around it, I found myself standing in the ruins of a life I thought I understood, betrayed, confused, and heartbroken. The truth, when it finally came to light, was far worse than I could have ever imagined. It all began with a phone call, one I'll never forget. My wife, Claire, was sitting across the room when she received the news. Her eyes lit up, and I could feel the shift in the air. She was ecstatic, almost as if the universe had handed her a golden ticket. Her aunt, a wealthy but distant relative, had passed away and left her a fortune, $1 million, tax-free. I was happy for her, of course. Who wouldn't be thrilled to receive such a gift? But there was something in the way she looked at me that day, something unsettling. It wasn't just joy. It was the kind of elation that seemed to awaken a part of her I hadn't seen before. In the following days, I watched as she started changing, almost imperceptibly at first. Little things, her spending habits, the way she spoke about her new freedom, the glint in her eye when she talked about her new lifestyle. She started spending time with people I didn't know, making decisions without consulting me. Even our home, which had once felt like a cozy sanctuary, began to feel alien. She started taking weekend trips without telling me, or worse, with friends I'd never met. Her evenings out became more frequent, and she began dressing in ways that were different. The person I thought I knew, the woman I had built a life with, was slipping away from me, and I didn't know how to stop it. There were moments when I tried to bring it up. I'd ask her where she'd been or why she was spending so much time away, but each time she dismissed me with a shrug or a quick excuse. "I'm just enjoying life," she'd say, but I could feel the distance growing between us, like a silent wall being built brick by brick. The inheritance didn't just give her wealth. It gave her a sense of independence, or perhaps I should say, a sense of entitlement. I began to realize that this new life she was creating was one that didn't include me. The money had changed her, but not in the way I had hoped. It had turned her into someone who saw herself as above it all, someone who didn't need me anymore. I first began to suspect something was off when Claire started coming home later and later. At first, it was just a few extra hours, her late nights at business dinners with her new friends, or the occasional "I lost track of time" text. But as the weeks wore on, it became more frequent, more blatant. There was always a new excuse, a new reason why she was out so late or couldn't make it to dinner. At first, I tried to dismiss it, telling myself she was simply caught up in the excitement of her newfound wealth. Maybe she needed to spread her wings, explore a life she hadn't known before. But then came the night I'll never forget. It was a Tuesday, and I had just gotten home from work when I saw Claire's phone on the kitchen counter. She left it unlocked, a rare thing for her. Normally, she was protective of her privacy, but that night I was too distracted by the pile of work in front of me to think much of it, until a notification popped up, just a glimpse of a message preview. "Can't wait to see you tonight. Same place, same time. I'm counting down the minutes. Jay." My heart stopped. The room felt like it was closing in on me. Jay wasn't someone I recognized, and the message was too intimate, too suggestive to be innocent. My mind raced as I tried to make sense of it. It couldn't be what I thought it was, could it? But the knot in my stomach told me otherwise. I couldn't sit still. I grabbed my coat, stormed out of the house, and drove to the restaurant she'd mentioned a few times before. The restaurant was upscale, tucked away in a quiet corner of the city, a place Claire had always raved about. I arrived just as the evening was beginning to settle into its rhythm. There, in the corner booth, was Claire, sitting across from a man I didn't recognize, laughing as if the world was just a place to be enjoyed. They were too close, too comfortable with one another, the way they leaned in and whispered to each other, the way his hand brushed against hers, as they shared a glass of wine. That was when the reality of it hit me. My wife, the woman I'd trusted with my heart, was having an affair. I could barely breathe as I watched them, feeling like I was suffocating in the very space I once called home. Every laugh, every smile, every touch felt like a stab to my chest. I knew right then that I had lost her. Maybe I had lost her long before this moment, but now I had the undeniable proof, and I wasn't even sure which part of it hurt the most, that she was betraying me or that she didn't even seem to care about the damage she was causing. The next day, I couldn't bring myself to confront her immediately. Instead, I let her believe that everything was normal, that I hadn't seen what I saw. I needed to think, to process it all. But as the days passed, the silence between us became unbearable. I could feel the weight of the secret pressing down on me. How could I stay quiet about this? How could I pretend everything was fine when I knew the truth? Finally, on a cold Thursday evening, I couldn't take it any longer. I had to confront her. I waited until she came home, then stood in the living room, my hands trembling with a mixture of anger and hurt. When she walked through the door, I asked her straight up, "Who is Jay?" Her face went pale for a moment, then quickly hardened into something I didn't recognize. She tried to cover it with a weak laugh, a nervous chuckle, but I saw right through it. I was done pretending. "You're having an affair, Claire. With him. I saw you." The silence that followed was deafening. It was as if the world had stopped moving. She didn't deny it. Instead, she looked at me, eyes filled with something I couldn't quite place. Shame, guilt, defiance? It was a mix of all three. "It wasn't like that. She started, but I cut her off." "You're right. It wasn't like that. It is that. You've been seeing him behind my back, and I had to find out from a damn text message." She didn't even apologize. Instead, she stood there, eyes searching for something to say, but all she could offer was a half-hearted attempt at justification. "You've been distant, too, you know. The inheritance changed things." "I've changed." "Changed?" I echoed, feeling my pulse quicken. "You're cheating on me, Claire, and you're blaming me?" Her silence was the loudest answer I'd ever received. And in that moment, I realized something. This wasn't just about betrayal. This was about power, control, and the person Claire had become since the money entered our lives. She had transformed from the woman I loved into someone I barely recognized, a stranger who didn't care for me, didn't need me, and certainly didn't feel the need to apologize for her actions. The first few days after discovering Claire's affair were a blur. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. The weight of betrayal felt like an anchor around my chest, dragging me into an abyss of anger and disbelief. But beneath that anger, something else stirred, a cold, calculated resolve. I had been the one betrayed, but I would not be the victim here. I wasn't going to let her get away with this. No, I was going to make sure she paid for every ounce of pain she had caused me, and I would do it in a way that would make her regret ever believing she could replace me with another man. I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to confront her just yet. If I acted too soon, if I let my emotions control me, it would be over before I had the chance to make her feel the consequences of her actions. I needed to be smarter than that. I needed a plan. The first part was obvious: money. Claire had changed after the inheritance. The money had brought out a side of her I'd never seen. It had given her confidence, sure, but also a sense of entitlement. The way she flaunted her new life, Her shopping sprees, her expensive nights out with her new lover. It was as if she'd forgotten that we had built our life together, from the ground up, on mutual effort and sacrifice. That money wasn't just hers now, it was ours. She had forgotten that. But I hadn't. I started researching. I went over every detail of our finances, every investment, every account. It wasn't hard to find what I needed. Claire had never been very secretive about her newfound wealth. There were the obvious places to start: joint accounts, the house we shared, the investments we'd made together before all of this. But I also knew there were assets she hadn't disclosed to me, things she'd begun hiding as soon as the inheritance landed in her lap. I wasn't foolish enough to trust her with any of it. If I was going to make her feel the weight of what she had done, I needed to take what was rightfully mine and make sure she knew exactly what I was doing. The next step in my plan was to gather evidence. I knew Claire's affair had been going on for months, but I didn't have a clear picture of how deep it ran. I started keeping track of her movements, following her when I could, taking photos when I needed proof. I watched her meet with her lover at cafes, at hotels, even once in a secluded park. Every time I saw them together, my anger simmered, but I kept it inside. Each photo I took, each moment I recorded, was another piece of ammunition in my growing arsenal. I also knew that her reputation in our social circle mattered to her more than anything. Claire had always prided herself on her image, her career, her friends, her status. I would use that against her. If she thought she could humiliate me, leave me behind for some rich guy with an ego to match hers, I was going to make sure her own reputation crumbled right along with our marriage. I began talking to our mutual friends, letting them in on small pieces of the puzzle. At first it was subtle, just mentioning that Claire seemed different lately, that she'd been acting strangely. But soon, I was planting seeds in the right places, making sure the gossip started to circulate. The turning point came when I hired a private investigator to dig into the affair. I needed hard evidence of just how long Claire had been seeing him, how serious it had become. A few weeks later, the investigator handed me the final report: pictures, dates, locations. It was everything I needed. I wasn't just going to be another jilted husband. I was going to expose her for who she truly was. A woman who had discarded everything we built together for a fleeting affair and an expensive lifestyle. But it wasn't just about exposing her. It was about taking control of the narrative. I knew the affair would destroy her credibility. But I also knew she would try to paint herself as the victim. She would say she was unhappy, that I was distant, that I didn't deserve her. I couldn't let that happen. I would be the one to tell our friends, our family, our entire social circle exactly what had happened. She would regret every lie, every betrayal. As I sat back and looked at the plan I'd put together, a sense of satisfaction washed over me. The hurt still lingered, of course. But now, it was replaced by something else: power. I wasn't the broken man I had been a few weeks ago. I was in control now, and Claire wouldn't know what hit her. I would make sure she learned that you can't have everything: money, love, freedom, without paying the price. And the price would be high. The moment finally came when planning had to turn into action. I had spent weeks gathering evidence, building alliances, and preparing every detail with surgical precision. Now, it was time for Claire to face the consequences of everything she had done. I wasn't going to lash out in anger. No, my revenge would be clean, calculated, and unforgettable. The first strike came quietly. I contacted our attorney and filed for divorce on grounds of infidelity. In our state, that mattered. The proof I had collected wasn't just emotional ammunition. It was legal firepower. With every photograph, every timestamp, every recorded detail of her affair, I ensured that the divorce settlement would not fall in her favor. She had entered our marriage with almost nothing, and now, despite inheriting a fortune, she would walk away with far less than she ever imagined. The next step was social exposure. Claire valued her reputation more than anything. Her business contacts, her wealthy social circle, her new friends who saw her as some glamorous, independent woman living her best life. I knew that once they discovered the truth, her perfect little image would crack like fragile glass. I didn't hold back. I shared the evidence discreetly with the people who mattered most to her image. I didn't need to exaggerate or twist the truth. The facts alone were enough to scorch her reputation. The whispers began almost immediately. People started looking at her differently, questioning her choices, distancing themselves. The invitations to exclusive parties slowed, then stopped altogether. Her lover, Jay, who had once seemed so enchanted by her wealth and thrill, suddenly disappeared from her life the moment things became complicated. He wasn't interested in a woman whose life was unraveling in public. Then came the final blow. With my lawyer's help, I froze all our joint accounts, secured my share of the assets, and ensured that Claire would not gain any financial advantage in the marriage she had walked away from emotionally long ago. Watching her struggle, confused, angry, panicked, was a strange mix of painful satisfaction. She had never expected that the husband she once dismissed would be the one to dismantle the foundation she thought she controlled. When the day of the final confrontation arrived, she stood across from me. No confidence, no arrogance, just defeat. And for the first time, she understood exactly what she had lost. Not just the money, not just the man she cheated with. She had lost me, my trust, my loyalty, and the stability she had taken for granted. And that was a revenge that cut the deepest. The days following the final divorce hearing were a strange mix of relief and quiet satisfaction. Claire's world had collapsed, piece by piece, until she had nothing left but her ruined reputation and the empty, lonely life she created for herself. The friends who once adored her had vanished, and her lover? He was long gone, just another casualty of the fallout. She tried to salvage what she could, but it was too late. The damage was irreversible. As for me, I took time to breathe. The weight that had been crushing my chest for so long finally lifted. I wasn't the broken man I had been just a few months ago. I'd rebuilt myself, stronger, smarter, and more determined than ever. I had learned the hard way that loyalty and love couldn't be taken for granted. But I had also learned how to stand up for myself, even when it felt like the world was against me. I didn't relish her pain, but I felt something close to peace in the quiet aftermath. It wasn't about vengeance anymore. It was about reclaiming my dignity, my life, and my future. I had learned that in the end, revenge wasn't just about punishing someone else. It was about freeing yourself. Looking back, I realized that my revenge wasn't as much about hurting Claire as it was about finding my strength again. The betrayal cut deep, but in the end, it was her loss, not mine. I learned the hard way that people will take as much as you let them, and sometimes walking away is the best thing you can do. I'm no longer defined by the past or the hurt she caused. I've moved forward, stronger and wiser, ready for whatever comes next. And this time, I'll be the one in control, living life on my own terms.